You yield for a couple of questions.
I'm your Huckleberry.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so I'm looking through your amendment, and I understand the items that you're trying to go through here. Let me put you on, if you could pull this up, 22, your proposed new 2226A-6. So this is monitoring, metering, and transparency. And this says all data centers shall do these things. Just let me know when you're there, okay. So first, your definition in here of a data center is not just those that hit that 90 megawatts or greater number. This is any and all data center that stores, processes, or otherwise holds information.
I can see the point.
Okay, so well, one of my concerns there would be that the requirement that's placed here potentially could fall onto literally small businesses or even maybe your house. But beyond that, that it could fall onto pre-existing data centers that we have here and that are not really the ones that are subject of the primary concern as put forward. I'm just asking if that is in fact the intent.
The intent is to ensure that a data center proposing to locate within the state of West Virginia cannot set up, withdraw water without any oversight and potentially impact citizens in that community. That's the intent.
Okay.
As I read and as I hear the testimony and the debate about the rules and all that, I don't hear any specifics from anyone in this body about any provisions which currently apply. I hear discussion about, well, we have this provision over here in code and we have this other provision over there in code, and maybe they'll apply to the data centers and maybe they won't.
Sure. But okay, so again, my swords aren't out, right? I'm trying to work with you. Okay?
We're good.
All right, so it does say, though, that each and every one of them will allow unannounced inspections. So that's in number 3, 2226A6, 3, in your proposed amendment.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not trying to be technical here or any of those things, right? I'm not trying to ask who would do those inspections or some of those various things, right? But would you agree that if, for instance, the FBI had a data center in the state of West Virginia, that we could run into issues with the supremacy clause, because they do, right? Saying that, hey, the state now gets to gain entry to your FBI data center at will, unannounced.
That would have to be taken up in the, potentially, if there was such a conflict, that would have to be decided in a court somewhere.
And even if there were private ones that were working on it, any number of things, right? Typically, access to these data centers and specifically to the water systems and things of that nature are held pretty close to the vest. I mean, would you agree, or more specifically, would you agree that there's a typical reason why there'd be controlled access to these facilities? Again, I'm not trying to play technical or anything like that. But could you see the concern sometimes with access to the facility itself physically?
Not sure I'm there with you on this one.
Okay.
I think the assumption would be that anyone who would be conducting an inspection would be an authorized representative of the West Virginia government. So.
Okay. Okay. I'll work through the next one. So I'm on 2226A7, 3. I think 3. No, 2226A7B. Not 3. Just let me know when you got there. So under here, this is an aquifer protection and pre-construction review, and I think you meant to have A there at the first in order to create this subdivision B. But A has prior to construction, and there's 3 things that they have to submit. B says, if any study indicates potential aquifer impact, the permit shall be denied. And that's not necessarily about drawing water from an aquifer. That would simply just say that if, hey, you added more water to the groundwater and that seeped into the aquifer, if any study, not even necessarily a governmental study or one put forward by the entity itself, the permit applicant itself, would you agree that that would say that if there's any impact on any aquifer, that any study claims that your permit would be entirely denied?
Is the context of this section having to do with applications for
construction?
Yeah. So I believe that it would be within that context specifically.
Right, okay, so if you're seeking a construction permit, if any study from anyone claims any impact whatsoever on an aquifer at all, you would be completely denied the ability to construct. So the reason why I'm getting here is that there were members that said that your amendment would, if adopted, amount to an outright ban on data centers in the state of West Virginia. I'm pointing to that as perhaps one of the key fatal flaws that are in here that would lead to that. Would you agree?
Not necessarily.
Okay. 22-26A-9, no preemption of property rights. And you've got number 3, loss of property value. Would you agree that if a private property owner were going to sell his or her property for maybe a whole lot of money, for a data center, for instance, to site a data center there, right, that you are creating a cause of action for them for loss of property value because now they can't have that development purpose?
I don't know that I accept the premise here,
Okay.
that we're denying anyone from an opportunity to develop a data center. I think we're only establishing guardrails in the event that an individual or a company wants to establish a data center.
Okay. Okay. I won't hit on that one too hard. I'd like to get now into chapter 24, which now goes from how you build it instead into whether or not you could for what purpose you can use this thing that you've built. Would you agree that that's what's really going on here in chapter 24 with the Public Service Commission?
With regard to the Fourth Amendment protections, I would certainly hope that we would codify and enforce to the fullest extent our Fourth Amendment protections for our citizens.
Very supportive of the Fourth Amendment, incredibly supportive of the Fourth Amendment. But I'm going to ask you, because you're talking about a downstream use of a product as compared to the product itself, right? So I'm going to ask here, so when you go into warrantless collection of metadata and things like that, could you see the analog if we were to say, hey, if you're a gun manufacturer, your guns cannot be used for X purpose, right? Because you're talking about a downstream purpose of the product or service.
I don't know that those two things are analogous.
Well, let me give you another one. If you're a coal producer and we sold coal as for instance, to China, should we tell our coal producers that you can't export coal to China?
Again, we're talking about apples and orangutans here.
We're talking about downstream utilization, right?
We're discussing in this tremendous colloquy here a physical product which is leaving a premises and going somewhere else where the person who sold that product has no control over what's done with it from that point forward.
Well, is that not also true in the digital world, right? You've got a bank of computers that are processing information. You've got a customer that's using them to process information. You may not even have the visibility into what that customer is using it for.
I believe that in the vast majority of cases, data center operators are well aware of who their clients are, or at least they should be. And if they're not, then there's a deficiency right there. But we need to know that they're aware of how the data is being collected, what it's being used for, and we have, as a state government, we have an interest in protecting the rights of our citizens. And if you don't like the way this is phrased, then I can understand that.
It's the means or method, but I'll stop questioning you there. I appreciate the respectful colloquy. I'm